Welcome, everybody. If you didn't hear my voice, I'm sorry.
It was just me talking to the earth.
It's just you talking to yourself.
It's fantastic. I
Which-
just love the professionalism of
you know, it happens.
of Judah and his elbows.
So let's welcome everybody again. Let's welcome everybody listening to on News Talk 980, KFWB, our home station, or Extreme Talk XM channel 165, or on the World Wide Web at KLEANradio.com. It's great to have you back in the studio tonight. We have a lot of stuff going on. But a couple weeks ago, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were talking about I went to pick up somebody, a radio listener, from the airport.
Right.
And it was really interesting because as I get there, the person sitting to my right goes, "Hey, Judah, do you mind going to pick her up?" And so I go to pick her up at the airport. And as I get there, she's waiting. She doesn't know if somebody from KLEAN is coming or her drug dealer. And so this is the
You're the perfect drug dealer lookalike.
Exactly, you know.
Like a Jewish gentleman,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
Looking nervous.
Yeah. I wouldn't go drug dealer on that one. I'd go with something else. And I get there and she doesn't know what to do and she's crying and
Right.
And I don't know what to do. I don't go to pick people up from the airport or
do anything.
Or do anything pretty
Right.
much other than talk to you. And we're a very friendly show. You know, Patrick doesn't like when we're mean to each other. Give me some love.
Really?
Yeah. Andrew, show me the love that you normally show me.
Our cameramen don't like that.
Yeah, he's Patrick's.
Right.
And
Judah, honestly, I do care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so I don't know what to do, so I call up Joe, and who's next to us, our intake guy, the intake person at KLEAN, who asked me to go and do this. And Joe literally it's between literally for her going to rehab.
Yep.
Joe gets on with her for the phone.
Tough choice.
Yeah, it is. You know, for a drug addict, that is the toughest choice.
Is a tough choice.
It's between death and living, and most addicts pick the death.
Right.
And Joe gets on the phone with her for 30
I didn't realize
seconds.
you were like the angel of living, but whatever.
Every once in a while I am.
Yeah, that's
Actually,
true.
Joe was the angel of living because
He
she got
was.
on the phone with Joe. 30 seconds.
Well, let's introduce
yeah,
Joe.
so
Nobody-
but
for those
that's
just
Who's
listening.
Joe?
Joe Parrott, KLEAN's intake director, and really an awesome guy. And I just want to welcome you. And I was really amazed. I know you so well, but I would have loved to have heard what you said to her on the phone for 30 seconds.
Maybe you don't want to know.
Maybe I don't want to know, but and I think let's talk a little bit about, first of all, who are you? You know, and I think it's interesting tonight. I just want to say this because our guest is coming up pretty soon, and both of you have very similar stories. You used to be in the fashion industry.
No.
Okay. You used to be in a different industry,
Interior
Club
design.
industry.
in the club industry,
And didn't you do
Club, yeah, some interior
design.
too.
interior design, and Andrew and you got a hold of each other, and Andrew gave you the job of doing the intake at KLEAN.
I think I blew him off 3 times, and then finally.
And then you did a transition in career.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about what is the intake process at a rehab. I know you're going to say it's boring, but
No, it's not boring
It's
at
anything
all.
but boring.
It's thank you. So the intake process is everything, often from that first phone call, talking to the person or their family that's in need, and needs to try to find their loved one help. How do I look here?
You look great.
You
Yes.
When I'm talking to you.
Yes,
No,
you
not
look-
worried about what I look like. So it starts there, and then there's a process of several phone calls, speaking with several people on the phone, trying to figure out how it's going to work. Trying to dispel some of the fears that people feel about going in, and what it's going to be like if they've never been to rehab before, or if they have been to rehab before and they've had pretty bad experiences. So my job is really to sort of put a really calming vibe on the, for lack of a better word, on the whole
Take some
experience.
of the fear out.
Yeah.
I mean, you must hear. I mean, sometimes it's got to be really hard because I know you would love to take everybody in, and not everybody could go to rehab or get in at that point, and you have to deal with families sometimes that are just they don't know what to do.
Right.
I mean, he has to talk you down every day.
Every day, and
I pay him extra for that.
Remember what I said. Remember I said Patrick wants it kinder, gentler. Now, but to everybody out there listening who just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We actually have a really awesome show for you tonight. I want to wish one of our loyal listeners out there, Rachel D., happy 12 years of sobriety. It's amazing. We're in the studio right now with Joe Parrott, who does intake at KLEAN, and we're talking about a little bit what the intake process is like. And I think it's very interesting, one of those things. Not everything happens right away. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 months before somebody actually, you've built relationships with people for.
Yeah. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it takes months. I mean, I've had, ultimately you want to try to get somebody in within 24 hours after that first phone call. But that's not always the way it works. That's the way Andrew would probably like it to work.
No,
that's the way I
right.
would like it to work.
Yeah.
No, but
I mean, obviously we don't want people out there suffering,
right?
But
right.
people also have to come in when they're ready.
Yeah, no, it's about building relationships with the people too, and that's the part that I enjoy. That's the part of the job that I enjoy, is building the relationship with these people. Sometimes for months before they come in, and helping them get through that process, and helping them get through the fear. And then that point when they walk through the door and they get to meet you in person, and they know they've got this alliance with you already, and they kind of have this trust for you, and they know that you're gonna take care of them, and you're not gonna send them into this big fearful place.
Well, it's actually amazing because years ago when I was when I was going to rehab a little over 14 years ago, my parents used to deal with this one person who they never had met. And for for a couple of years they talked to Izzy on the phone, because Izzy was the guy that would try to help my family out, and they had never met him. And when they finally met him one day, it was like they had this instant connection that I'm sure you have with families, because you're just that voice on the other side, and they get to meet you, and it must be just an amazing experience sometimes. It
is sometimes, yeah, it is. Sometimes it's one of those experiences where you can see that sort of relief, like they finally made it, and then what I do when they get in is just to try to make them as comfortable as possible, and make the intake process, and there's paperwork, and there's getting to meet staff and meet other clients, and getting introduced to your accommodations and all that can be really stressful and really fearful, and I just do my best to try to make it a really comfortable experience.
Well, I must say, I speak for Andrew on this one. It is an honor, to see you every day. You're absolutely just an amazing person. It comes from the heart when you talk to people on the phone. And I think it also speaks volumes. This isn't an infomercial for KLEAN. We're one of those places.
Yeah,
you call
you're just making it sound
like
one.
If you actually called
Judy, he can't help himself.
If you actually called us up though, and you're not for us, we'll put you to the place that you need to go.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of what happens.
Yeah,
right?
Most of the time I'd say that's what happens.
Yeah.
But if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio Live. That's KLEAN with a K. Give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. If you have any sort of questions we are a show about addiction and recovery. We're a show about hope, the hope that comes after you get sober. And I can't think of anybody, I always say that, but we have awesome guests on this show. And the guest tonight, aside from Joe, is Elisa Hallerman. She is a former amazing agent with every firm, with UTA, Endeavor, whoever they became after. And she gave it all up. She gave up the agent life to get into the sober world. And let's welcome to KLEAN Radio, Elisa Hallerman.
Thank you very much.
Owner of HallyLife.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
And I said that correctly, right?
That is correct. Endeavor is now called WME, William Morris Endeavor.
It's William Morris went on an Endeavor, and and so
only an LA person would understand that joke.
Yes, and so right, we are
or New York maybe,
or you're right, not in Florida. But welcome. What made you? So you are sober yourself.
I am.
And you basically gave that all up. You were an agent for 15 years.
I was an attorney before I was an agent, and then I was an agent for about 15 years. It was not just an overnight decision of just giving it up. And what I did was, when I hit about 5 years sober, I realized that although I was abstaining from drugs and alcohol, I wasn't happy. I'd hit all those benchmarks in my life that I thought that I wanted to, and then some. And I had all the outside things. And when and it was about 5 years sober, and I realized I just felt still really unhappy, and I was really sad. And so I was forced to go inward and work on my program and really find a spiritual practice. And with that, about 3 years into that, when I started to uncover who I really was and what I was about, I realized I wasn't an agent anymore. And then became the journey of, well, what do I want to do? And how can I use the skills of being an attorney and being an agent and do something else, but not sort of turn my back on the industry or something that has been so great for me for such a long time. And that's where HallyLife came from.
So what exactly is HallyLife for our listeners?
So I went back to school while I was still working at WME at night and got my drug and alcohol counseling certificate, and started to realize that there were a lot of different holes in the industry of recovery, and started to see different places where I felt like I could make a difference. And I opened HallyLife West, which is a sober living house down in Santa Monica for young adult males, 18 to 30. And then once I officially left the industry, I started getting a lot of phone calls from people that I knew. Can you help with this? Can you do that? And that's really where HallyLife Consulting came from. And now I work with families and individuals at any stage in their recovery. So whether it's someone thinking about getting into recovery or a family that needs help, crisis intervention, walking them through the process.
So you really do the full scale of case management, right?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more than the average case manager, just because it is a skill set of mine to manage people's lives and be really specific and be really honest and really stay with them the entire time.
That's great. Yeah, what a transition, huh?
I mean, it's
like the Buddha of life recovery there.
But I think what is it about 5 years sober, Andrew? Because I mean, obviously, I had the same issue.
It's number 5. I think anything that marks an anniversary that seems significant, all of a sudden we attach ridiculous importance to it.
Because I came out here at 5.5 years sober, I sort of had that same moment where you start evaluating.
I have this thing that I think one of the issues with AA about counting your days is almost a mistake. It puts you so much pressure on you if you relapse, like that you failed.
Right.
And I also think it sets up unrealistic sort of benchmark expectations for a person's recovery. It shouldn't be about how many days you're sober. It should be about the fact that you're sober that day and what are you doing that day to stay sober.
Well, I think the best thing for me with counting days is to help me remember when things happen. And that was like the biggest, like that happened at a year and a half sober.
Right. Most guys like to use football seasons.
Yeah, it was my benchmark, and it's true.
That was true, wasn't it?
Yeah.
See, weird, huh?
But so at 5.5 years, and you said something happened at 8 years, right, or something around that point where you had a spiritual thing. Was that you just realized you couldn't be an agent because that world was a little different than the spiritual?
No, not really. And I love what you said about people that have long-term sobriety or people that go out, because it's true. And what I say to a lot of people is that you do not lose everything that you've learned in the program or just in general during that time that you were clean. Yeah. And it's so important because I think it's a lot of the shame for people to come back because it is about starting.
It also tends to make people just go off the deep end.
Yeah.
You know, they have one drink and they're like, oh, I had a drink. Might as well just do some blow too.
That's right.
And let's do this for as many weeks as I can before I have to get sober again, instead of mitigating the effect of having relapse to as short a period as possible and trying to, not lose anything from what they've gained so far.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's scary to when I first came into the rooms, I never stood up as a newcomer. But okay, back to your question. What was it? 8 years?
No, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about Judah.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio Live. That's KLEAN with a K.